Until the next, until lunch, actually. And we are going to invite up to speak and give us updates the easternmost area of this region. So with this, I'd like to introduce Bob Cox with the Mexico Beach Artificial Reef.
I think most of you know who I am. Welcome this morning, and I'm Bob Cox from the Mexico Beach Artificial Reef Association. We're an all-volunteer organization taking the lead in Mexico Beach with permitting processes, building reefs, and monitoring them. Recent accomplishments over the last couple of years, we completed our $1.4 million NERDA phase 3 project. We did that inside of 12 months. We started in 2016 and wrapped it up in April of 2017. And then after that, in April, we had a $60,000 grant from FWC, along with other private and matching funds that we applied towards the grant for $146,000. And we also added another $22,000 in memorial reefs. Our memorial reef program is really becoming popular, and it's nothing to have about 4 to half a dozen memorial reefs going out with every deployment now. This was our deployment back to the grant deployment. That was the Maranatha 2. It was the first time we used it over in our area. Did a great job. One thing I've got to say, it's a great crane on there, and the dynamic positioning system on there was awesome. I mean, the accuracy and being able to keep the vessel stable compared to their first vessel, Maranatha 1, it's amazing. Construction pending. As Alan Golden alluded to, we have a $120,000 NERDA project coming from Bay County that we're going to be deploying in the 4 patch reefs in the Sherman site. And something that's next on our horizon, Walter Marine has also offered this old casino vessel. It's in Louisiana. The history back on that's back in the days before Hurricane Katrina, the only way you could really operate a casino, it was offshore. So these types of vessels were popular, but during Katrina, they became battering rams. So the Mississippi and Louisiana changed their policies on that, start putting casinos on land so they don't have these big battering rams sitting out there in the water when a hurricane comes through. So now these vessels are surplus, and this one's up for $1 million, prepared and sunk. And we got some pledge. MBRA is going to contribute $80,000 towards this project. We got St. Joe Community Foundation is going to contribute $50,000, and plus we got about another $10,000 in private local donations pledged towards this project. We took that and applied, sent in a pre-application to Gulf Coast Triumph. They came back and said, we like what you're proposed, and to go ahead and submit a full application. So it's looking pretty promising, but hopefully, you know, by the time this time next year, we'll have a better idea of whether that's going to happen or not. There's what the vessel looks like now. It's sitting in Louisiana, 210 feet, 66 width, height of 70 feet. You may have to take the wheelhouse off to meet surface to reef top requirements, and it's almost 2,200 tons. Reef monitoring, 2017, we accomplished 62 and posted those on our website. And in 2018, we did 43. And in 2019, we're going to do as many as possible, especially in the Bell Shoals area, because as Jeff Wrenchen will mention later on this afternoon to show you a lot of things with some of the Hurricane Michael assessment, we're going to really focus on that area, and we have a lot to learn there as far as what a storm can do to our reef modules. And also, as Keith showed in one of the pictures, the Shady Lady, it uprighted, and that vessel sits in 95 foot of water. We sunk it back in 2007, went down on the side, and it was on its side until Michael came along. Okay, here's a map of what our reef permit sites are. The ones in blue are the ones we have in state waters. These 5 squares out in the federal waters we have there, and the LARS A and LARS B belongs to Bay County, but in the past we have deployed some of our funding out in the LARS B side as well. And I'll hold questions just like we did with the the earlier group until all the associations are done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'd like to invite Grayson Shepherd up to give us an update on some of Franklin County's artificial reef activities.
I'm Grayson Shepherd. I'm from Apalachicola. In my defense, I didn't know I was on the agenda until Keith kind of showed it to me a little while ago. But unfortunately, I don't have anything to show up here because I don't have anything in the water down there. We just formed our Artificial Reef Association 2 weeks ago. That's going to be the Apalachicola Artificial Reef Association, the AARA. I wanted to call it the Apalachicola Artificial Reef Project, but somebody had already used AARP, so I can't do that one. But we have submitted an application for a reef site in state waters, about 8.5 miles, roughly due south of the Bob Sykes Cut, if you guys are familiar with that area, off of St. George Island, in state waters. So it'll hopefully be accessible to state charter captains. There's a lot of, smaller bay boat type captains that'll be able to run out there on a good day and hopefully let some of their people catch snappers or whatnot. Like I said, we don't have anything yet. We're in the permitting process. As soon as we get something, made some contacts here. In fact, Jim with Reef Innovations generously donated our very first reef ball. We'll probably do a deployment this weekend. And so I'll keep you guys monitored on how that goes. But looking forward to being back here next year. Hopefully I will be able to give a real report, maybe with a picture of something that we can put up here so I can kind of join the crowd. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to seeing you guys next year. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Grayson. Next, we have Bill Horn to give us an update from the City of Carabel, Wakulla County Organization for Artificial Reefs area. So welcome, Bill Horn.
Thank you. I also got the last minute notice here of coming, so I had a wonderful presentation as well. My name is Bill Horn. After finally coming to my senses for 22 years, working with Keith Milley in the state program, I went to consulting in the private sector. So that's what I do now. So with OR, I wear a lot of hats. I work with a lot of people. I've worked with Bay County to help them with their permitting of their large area. Work with Walton County to those snorkel sites. I actually designed those using my mapping program. That was a lot of fun. It was like connecting the dots. It was really fun. But with OR, I'm their designated visiting consultant. So now I'm wearing my OR hat. They're not too busy. OR is one of the oldest artificial reef associations in the state. They were founded in the mid-'80s, believe it or not. Their priorities are Wakulla County, St. Mark's, and working with the city of Carabel. They've been managing these are very, very small counties. They don't have the staff or the resources to deal with artificial reefs. They'd rather deal with sewer problems and road problems and things like that. So, OR helps them with their permitting, with their diving, with their grant applications. And we've been doing that for quite a while. We haven't done anything recently. The last 2 grants we submitted to FWC, unfortunately, were turned down and we didn't get the funding. FWC OR gets their funding mainly through grants. Like I said, it's a nonprofit group. It's a very small group, but they have a group of dedicated board members. Alan Richardson is the president, and he wished he could have come. But he also wishes you'd have these meetings on weekends instead of the weeks because he can't miss 2 days of work to get here. So he sends me to talk about it. We've got several sites, active sites. Even though we're not deploying, we're always working on keeping active sites. You can't build an artificial reef unless you have an active permit site. So we have 2 sites off of Carabel. One's the deeper site, about 60 feet of water. The water's not real deep over there compared to over here. And that's the 10-mile, Carabel 10-mile site, 10 miles out. And then there's a smaller site, St. Teresa's site, about 40 feet of water. And they deployed back in 2016. That was basically the last deployment in that area. And then in Wakulla County, the St. Mark's Reef was the most recent deployment over there in 2016. But we did get a new permit in that area, the Marker 24 permit. We got approved last year, and we will be submitting a grant application for that. to get some materials out there. We have some materials of opportunity we would like to put out there. And we are actively permitting another site. The city of St. Mark's just approved the application for a new permit for the Dog Ballard Reef. So as soon as I get back on Friday, I'll submit that to Lisa. Hopefully Lisa's here. You'll be getting it from me probably Monday, not by Friday, but probably by Monday. So we're staying busy, we're staying active. Like I said, there's a dedicated group of volunteers. It's kind of hard to keep the volunteers active, but they enjoy what they're doing, and we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we can have Grayson and Bob come back up, and we'll welcome any questions from the audience.
Come on, guys. They walked all the way
Come on,
back up
please
there.
fire. Oh, no.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah.
I really don't have a question, but I did want to express my gratitude to see you guys, and the amount of volunteering that y'all do is phenomenal. I know what this costs in terms of dollars if we were to go out and contract that work. So I just want to thank y'all.
Thank you.
I know, I just want to say, I kind of feel like the redheaded stepchild between these two, because if you guys look at the FWC map of artificial reefs and you look at Mexico Beach, I mean, it's awesome. Mbara, you guys have done incredible work. And then, or off of the Carabel area, which is to my east. And I don't know how many you guys have over there, but there's a pile over there. And right there in the middle is Apalachicola. I mean, we're known for oysters, and that's about it. And there's really only two little sites that are in state waters that are offshore from Apalachicola. One of them was deployed in 1965, and it was a handful of culverts. And then the Franklin Reef was part of the old bridge between East Point and Apalachicola. That was 1983. The last artificial reef deployed off of St. George Island was 15 years ago. And it was some of the old bridge spans between East Point and St. George Island. I've been a charter captain for 20 years over there. And basically what did it was one of Walter Marine's barges, I believe it was, going under the bridge of Apalachicola, heading over to Carabel to drop some reef balls. And it just rubbed me raw. I'm sitting there, I'm looking at this barge full of this beautiful stuff, just go right on by Apalachicola. And I jumped on the radio and I asked the guy, where are you taking it? He goes, oh, we're taking it over there to the other side of Carabel. I'm like, nope, that's not going to work. So I went to the county commission and sat down with some of those guys, and here we are now. That's 3 years later, and it's taken this long for me to kind of single-handedly get the community behind it, and now we kind of got a snowball rolling down the hill. And like I said, we don't have a dime. I'm going to apply for the FWC permit if I get our permit in time, but till then, we're gonna do a bake sale at the Piggly Wiggly. If anybody wants to come to Apalachicola and help, I'd appreciate it. Like I said, I'll see you guys next year. I'll have better report for that.
Add something on that. Good. The funding issue is really important, and I meant to talk about it. Besides the grants, another funding opportunity that has been very important for OR more recently in recent years, and certainly Mexico Beach, or memorial reefs. People want to build reefs to memorialize somebody that's passed. And so that's a very important funding source. It's a very important thing to do. Walter Marine does a lot of memorial reefs, and of course, reef balls, the internal reefs do the same thing. So that's an opportunity for funding as well that needs to be kept in mind.
All right.
Yeah, to caveat on some of that funding there, where we get we do things like the annual Kingfish tournament. And that's a big, we get about 140 to 200 boats there, and people have a good time, and it's all to support a good cause. It's a charity fundraising event is what it is.
All right. Any last questions? All right.
Well, you're all too easy.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule, so before Lisa comes up, I'd like to invite Peter from Reef Smart to say a few words about some of the projects that his company has been working on. I think it's appropriate to And maybe I can open up your little slide here. Scott, let me know if I need to push anything else. Are we broadcasting this okay? Okay. So I'll give Peter a few minutes to kind of introduce himself and share with us some of the work you've been doing.
Thanks, and thanks for squeezing me in at the
Good.
last minute.
Sure.
Seems like a lot of folks
Sure.
were squeezing the last minute, which is great.
Sure.
Excellent point. So my company, we make these underwater, we map reefs and wrecks. I'll walk away from that. We map reefs and wrecks. We also create these dive guidebooks, and that's what's brought me to this region. I've been talking with Alex Fogg for a couple of months now. We've been trying to arrange a partnership with through a bunch of the counties so that we can create these dive guidebooks. We've got ones for Fort Lauderdale, Bonaire, Barbados. We've got ones coming out for Palm Beach County. And what we're trying to do is create a partnership of the folks here to really enhance the awareness of the diving in a given region. As you can see, those are some of our titles we have now. We're expanding to Palm Beach, Cayman. We're in talks with a lot of other areas, including Cozumel and even Grenada, St. Lucia, some of the Caribbean islands. Our main focus right now is in the Caribbean. And we basically, some of you may have seen, we do the underwater wrecks. We do natural reefs as well. Specifically here, I think there's a lot of opportunities. You guys are doing a lot of incredible work in enhancing the diving in the area through a lot of the artificial reefs, the snorkel reefs. And it's something that we're really interested in trying to partner with you all to kind of pull together into a book, something that really can help put the Panhandle onto the proverbial diving map. And so I'll be around through lunch if you guys have any questions. And that's my contact information as well. So thanks again, Keith, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda is Lisa Lovern from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Panama City office. So appreciate you joining us today and sharing with us some of the regulatory updates that a lot of us need to stay aware of.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll get your presentation going here in just a minute.
So just in case any of you don't know me, my name is Lisa Lovern. I work in the Panama City permit section. We are currently orphans and moving around, but we are about to get into our new office. So it will be out on the beach. I don't know if any of you have come to visit us over on 23rd Street, but you'll have to go a little bit further now. We're going to be out on the beach at the corner of Richard Jackson and Hutchinson Boulevard. So I did update our slide and these will be available. The phone numbers are still being worked out. We haven't got our IT and everything going yet. So bear with us. Email is the best. I can give you all my email address. It'll be in here as well. So again, Lisa Lovern. And I was asked to talk about applying for permits as well as giving a JAXPO update that is for the National Marine Fisheries Service for their endangered species. We have a programmatic that we're able to use, which is great. As long as you are designing your reef within those parameters, and you'll see those soon. Space? Okay, and as I just talked about, we're going to talk about the Corps' authority and liability. That's a big one. Talk about our application process, as well as permit considerations for state, for endangered species. We have some standard special conditions that we have for reef projects that we have for the Jacksonville district as a whole. So we'll look at those. And last but not least, compliance and enforcement. So really don't have to tell anyone here, we're all here for the same reason, in the fact that artificial reefs are great habitat. They're not only good for enhancing our fisheries, but they're also really good economic benefit for our coastal counties. And again, I'm not going to read all the slides. So going into our core authority, we have the Rivers and Arbors Act. And with that, we're responsible for navigation. And so our jurisdiction, federal jurisdiction, extends from the coastline to 200 nautical miles. For some of you that work directly with the state, that's obvious a difference because the state, their jurisdiction goes out to 9 nautical miles. So a bit of a difference. Another authority that we are responsible for is the Clean Water Act. And with that, it's section 404. The 404 is for discharge of fill. Our jurisdiction for artificial reefs in the Gulf extends 3 nautical miles out. So if your proposal is for 3 nautical miles, you would get a dual permit from the Corps, which would be a section 10 permit as well as a section 404. Most reefs are further out. So you would still need to get a Corps permit, but it would only be under section 10, not section 404. The state permit considerations, as I just stated, their jurisdiction goes out to 9 nautical miles. So for the Corps, for federal purposes, we have to ensure that the projects abide by the Coastal Zone Management Consistency Act. And so mainly the state is responsible to give us that certification, if you will. In some cases, state permits aren't required. So in those cases, the Coastal Zone Management Consistency Act certification still may be required. And if it is, usually that process takes about 60 days. Fun. Permitting. Everybody loves it. So just a real quick run through with this is we get a permit application, verify a programmatic general permit. These are permits that we have gone into with, whether it be a county or the state, but these are programmatic permits that they authorize on our behalf. Currently, we have nothing that will address artificial reefs. So we move on to the next one, which would be a regional general permit or a nationwide permit. Again, locally in the state of Florida, we currently do not have any regional general permits, and we do not have any nationwide permits that will address artificial reefs. So lo and behold, you get pushed into a standard permit. These permits, there are major permits. These take approximately 120 days to process. However, we do have ESA situations where sometimes the consultation takes a little bit longer. In some other cases, we get requests back for cultural resource surveys. Sometimes those logistics, it takes a bit longer. But with the standard permit, we're going to put out a public notice. We want to let everybody know what's going on, what's being proposed in their waters. Tracy's going to address that shortly. Again, we have a lot of things that we have to abide by. The 404B1 guidelines, those have to do with the Clean Water Act. Again, that's with the reef that's within 3 nautical miles from the shoreline. We have to look at public interest review. Those go back to, I'm not sure who was talking about safety. We have to look at economics. There's a lot of different parameters that we have to look at and address. Also, obviously, compliance with NEPA, the ESA, historic properties, essential fish habitat. There's a numerous amount of laws that we have to look and ensure that we're abiding by. And then this rarely happens. I don't know. I can count on one hand that I've seen that happen. Application approved, and we move on to a permit issue. And just to let you know, normally Corps permits, the initial permit is authorized for 10 years. Before you want to apply, we need to look at liability. In any case, anyone comes to the Corps asking for a permit, that applicant on that page is responsible. They're responsible if it fails, they're responsible if somebody dies. There's a liability factor. In most cases with artificial reefs, we normally have governmental entities that will apply. And the reason being is because normally they claim sovereign immunity or they are self-insured. And so that is the way that we are able to permit that. Alan mentioned earlier private deployments. Keep in mind those private deployments are within Bay County's permitted reef area. Something happens, unfortunately, Bay County has to take it as far as their, if there's any kind of enforcement. Items for a complete application. I know lots of you have probably applied. We have an ENG 3-page form, very easy. We broke out from the state joint process, which was approximately 42 pages. So we have a 3-page good project description. Why are you wanting the reef? What are you trying to get from it? What species are you trying to generate? Adjacent property owners and addresses. Normally that is not an issue because these things are out in deep water. We have our regular agencies that we have to, that we coordinate with, as well as some other entities, non-governmental entities. And again, Tracy will address that. Statement avoidance minimization, as well as a compensatory mitigation statement. Those are only required if you are building your reef within 3 nautical miles from the shoreline, because that is our 404 jurisdiction. Again, set of drawings. Yes, we're a little primitive. We need 8.5 by 11. If you have to piecemeal it, then just piecemeal it. But that's the size that we can accept. Overall site plan. You don't have to worry about the wetland boundaries. And the big difference for artificial reef applications versus a regular application is we have several NOAA items that we have to get because we have to chart with them, as most of you know. And we'll go in that in just a second. Everybody knows there's several guidebooks out there. I think this is a lot of people's Bible, and we have a second Bible coming up. But this gives you the guidelines for siting, for construction, for development and assessment. Talks about the appropriate reef materials that you can use, and it references the guidelines for marine artificial reef material, which we'll see in a moment, which these people put together. Sightings. You need to consider the objectives of your reef. Just a moment ago, y'all were talking about near shore versus offshore. That's going to really depend on, that's going to decide where you're going to want to put, obviously, your reef. Recreation. Are you looking at snorkelers, or are you looking at deep scuba divers, or fishing, spear fishing? It depends on what population you're trying to target, people-wise as well as species-wise. Prevent unreasonable obstructions to navigation. Again, for the Corps, our responsibility for the Rivers and Harbors Act is navigation. Minimum depth clearance is 2 times the height of the material at the top, and that is measured from mean low water. Minimize user conflicts. Obviously, if you have somebody out there that's gonna, they built this reef for diving, and then you have the fishermen come up and start, fishing their species that they were wanting to dive and look at. So we want to get that information out there as well. And protect existing resources. Obviously, if there's a coral reef existing out there, you don't want to throw, a reef ball on top of it. A moment ago, I mentioned to you specific things that NOAA requires that they need for artificial reef. And a lot of you have probably seen this. This is very familiar to a lot of you that look at charts. But we need accurate geographic coordinates. And we discourage the point radius reefs where you just give us the center and say, okay, we're going to go around a circle and that's going to be our area. We like to get the coordinates at each corner as well as in the center. This is something that NOAA has been asking us for. Obviously, the minimum clearance, that's going to be on your charts for the nautical charts. No conflict with, again, if somebody already has a reef there, you don't want to put one there. And deployment notification. There are several requirements and permit conditions for the Corps that's pre-deployment and post-deployment. So we're saying what's being deployed, exactly where to go. Again, another Bible for reef materials. Gives you a lot of examples, which we'll look at. Material criteria, we got 4 things that we really look at. Function, compatibility, stability, and durability. Just as they were talking about a minute ago with the hurricane, you want to make sure what you put down there stays down there. I know there's the acts of God, but that's why we're looking at these types of materials that have been shown to meet these criteria. Again, just kind of a rundown of the acceptable material requirements. Just know this is not an end all be all. Sometimes, and I can't think of an exact example at the moment, but sometimes somebody wants to put something different than what is listed, in the reef guide, in the reef material guideline. And so we can entertain other things, but when we do that, we need to put it into our public notice and put that out to the public to let them see what unusual, quote unquote, items would be put out there. It's something that we would normally do. As we were looking at acceptable materials, we have reef balls in the back. Great things. They tend to be the most successful in a lot of the monitoring that we have seen. Large concrete building demolition materials. Earlier, we were talking about DuPont Bridge. The construction, when they blew that up, they have a reef that from those materials, as well as ferrous and aluminum alloy metal components. Hull vessels. Now, obviously, as a couple of people have talked about deploying some of these vessels, there's a lot of requirements, a lot of cleanup. Now, that's not to say these aren't great reef structures. So, but they have to pass a lot of different inspections. You need to go through the Coast Guard. There's a lot of coordination that can be done with that. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, they have the rigs to reef. We were talking about a moment ago, someone was talking about the towers that maybe possibly, you know, blow them up, quote unquote, on site and let them and start them from there. And then decommissioning oil and gas platforms, which I believe Alex mentioned something about going over to Louisiana. Unacceptable materials. I know a gentleman earlier showed us that early 1970 tire deployment. As he said, that's not necessarily acceptable today. We've learned a lot, which is great. So tires. This looks like to be some kind of remedial early artificial reef structure. These guys are having a good time. We just kind of blew up an open fiberglass vessel just to put down there. Public notice. I'm going to turn this over to Tracy, and she's going to address public notice and essential fish habitat. I'm sorry, endangered species.
Endangered species. I'm not doing essential fish habitat today. I'm Tracy Wheeler. I work out of the Panama City field office. I do a lot of work with endangered species stuff, so I get that joy. We have a lot of responsibilities when we get a permit application from you. We have to fulfill a whole bunch of federal laws, and we have to do a whole lot of coordinating. We're required by our regulations to do that. We want to gather as much information from the public and from other agencies as we can so that we can be sure that the projects that we permit are in the best public interest. So for everybody's interest. So that's what, when we put out we get all that information from you so that we have enough information to put it out to the public to gather information back. And sometimes we have conflict with users groups and stuff that, you know, somebody may not want your structure or somebody may want a whole bunch of your structures. And we want to gather as much information as we can. It is not a discourse. It is not a conversation. It is us asking to gather the information. If we have conflicts that come up, we'll go back to the applicant and we'll say, okay, these things were brought up. These are things that we were not aware of. I don't like my voice. That was weird. But, you know, so if we have subjects that come up or questions that come up or new information, we will coordinate back with the applicant, but that's a conversation between the applicant and the Corps. We don't get into a lot of back and forth with commenters. Sometimes we do have public hearings or public meetings that are required as part of our permit process. And in that time, we do have some more of those conversations, but mostly at this point, it's for gathering information. We are required by law to coordinate with a whole bunch of agencies. We do this for every standard permit that we issue. For artificial reefs, though, we do have requirements to coordinate with the Coast Guard, port authorities, military bases, and the non-government organizations like the Southern Shrimp Alliance, because there are groups that they have more interest in activities that happen offshore. So we wouldn't necessarily coordinate a Walmart standard permit with Coast Guard because they don't care, but they would care more about the artificial reefs that come up. Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act requires us, if we take a federal action, issuing a permit is a federal action. It's authorizing an activity in federal areas where we have federal jurisdiction. It requires us to make an effect determination and coordinate that determination with the resource agency. This is what tends to take us a fair amount of time when we're dealing with projects like artificial reefs, because we have to make sure that we meet all the requirements for either Fish and Wildlife Service or National Marine Fisheries Service. We don't do a whole lot for artificial, well, goodness gracious, artificial reefs with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because most of their species are more inshore. But if you're doing any equipment staging or transportation across shallow water areas, we may need to address manatees, high ground areas for equipment, and material staging might impact an eastern indigo snake or something like that. But primarily we deal with the National Marine Fisheries Service. So they have a lot of species that are out there. A lot of the things that you want to attract are things that they're responsible for. But it does take a long time for us to do a biological assessment, for them to issue a biological opinion, and then we get all of our, all of our conditions and everything. It takes a very thorough review. We want them to be responsible. We want to have that kind of review, but we also want to be efficient. So the Corps of Engineers and National Marine Fisheries Service got together a little over a year ago. We adopted the Jacksonville Biological Opinion. It addresses consultation for in-water work for several different areas or different activities. It utilizes project design criteria. So if you can meet certain criteria, you get the checkbox and you can move forward with your project. It's an efficiency for us and for them. It helps us get our projects through faster while giving the appropriate level of review. So we are meeting our responsibilities, but we're doing it in a faster way. And I got to speed up a lot. So there are 10 activities that are covered. Number 7 is the aquatic habitat enhancement, and that covers artificial reefs. There are project design criteria for all projects that are in water. So if you have any project that is in the water, it has to meet specific criteria. And there are 11 of those that apply. And then there are specific PDCs for artificial reefs. And they start activity number 7, like I said, is the one that addresses artificial reefs. And condition 13 for activity 7 is where the artificial reef requirements kick in. And there are a lot of them. I don't expect you to be able to read them. I just wanted to show that they're there. I think they're 22 different conditions. A lot of our standard permit conditions that we put on reef permits mirror the JAXPO conditions. So if you have had a permit before, or you can pull up a permit that has been issued previously and you can see the standard conditions, you probably will comply with JAXPO. JAXPO does specify the kind of materials that are covered by the biological opinion, and vessel deployment is not covered by the Jacksonville Biological Opinion. So that would take a formal consultation with National Marine Fisheries Service. Okay. So there are a whole bunch of permit conditions. We can get those, like I said, they're standard. If you want to reach out to Lisa or to me, we can provide those to you if you're designing a project. And we're going to put Lisa back up here. And that was like speedy and dangerous species. If you have any questions, find me and I'll answer them.
Running out of time. So real quickly, the enforcement compliance end of it, that comes in with the Clean Water Act. There's a couple of sections. There's the 404S, and then there's also the 309E, I believe. But just to let you know that there are administrative penalties that can occur if the permits are not in compliance. Insured deployments are within the boundaries, and then summary. I know you can't see that. I'm going to have all of this up. Scott's already got it, so if he wants to give it to any of y'all, that gives us our field offices, application submittal form, along as well with the application email. Again, this is going to be on our main Jacksonville website, and I can give y'all all that information. And those are references. So that's it.
Thank you, Tracy and Lisa. Actually, if you like, come on back up, and I do appreciate you staying within the time, because we especially wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. Usually, permitting, and we see a lot of questions for that. So, so we'll take any questions. I see Bob has his hand up, and so go ahead.
Good morning, ladies.
Morning.
Bob Cox from Mexico Beach. Having experience over the years with applying for permits, I was wondering if the JAXPO, if your application meets the requirements of the JAXPO, are they getting through agencies faster now, like National Marine Fisheries Services? Because I know typically for us, National Marine Fisheries Services, where our process gets hung up for quite a while.
If you meet the terms and conditions of Jaxpo, we send in the information. We have to fill out some checklists and information to provide to them based on the information you provide us. But we send them an email and we can issue the permit that day. We don't have to get anything back from them. They will, if for some reason one of us makes a mistake and submit something that doesn't meet Jaxpo, they will let us know that and then we'll let you know. But if it complies with Jaxpo, then we can issue the permit the day that we make that determination.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that speeds things way up.
Yes.
Expectation setting. So when the NERDA phase 3 came in, right, there was a deluge. You were inundated with a whole bunch of reefing, things like that. Within 3 miles of the Florida coastline, from flash to bang and a quarter mile by quarter mile, standard permitting, what would you expect to tell us as reef coordinators and managers is the expected timeline from submitting a permit to actually getting a validated permit with no errors on it going into your office?
I would say 120 days, as I said earlier, for the standard permits. We currently don't have any programmatic permits or nationwides that address artificial reefs. So it would definitely move it into the standard permit. And with that, as we were talking about earlier, you have a public notice time period. So that's a 30-day at least time period that's, we're waiting for comments. As she stated, with the Jaxpo, there's not a waiting time for that. There used to be a 10-day waiting time with a different programmatic that we had. And then, of course, with informal and formal, there's an open-ended consultation. So I would say 120 days.
Okay, that's significantly better than the 18 to 24 months that it has been taking.
Yes, it is.
Yes, okay,
It's
perfect. I just wanted to make sure that was out here for everybody.
Yep,
That's why we love Jaxpo.
that's why
Yeah, and I
we are
guess
cheering for Jaxpo.
I'd like to add to that, Bob, that, please use our office, FWC, Artificial Reef Program in Tallahassee, to help provide the technical assistance, Florida statute. That's one of the reasons why we're here. We've increased our equipment over the past 3 or 4 years or so. So we now have the in-house capability to assist with some of those surveys. And specifically side scan sonar, I think will help with a lot of the mapping, and that'll help accelerate the process. So, the permits that Bill Horn is reauthorizing off of Wakulla, Franklin counties, and Grayson Shepherd, some of those, I think you're utilizing some of our side scan. We've got Okaloosa County, in queue to help side scan those 3 sites that Alex is, identified. So please use us and we can help as best we can make sure the applications are complete before they're submitted to the Corps.
And just know side scan takes time, and we're working with multiple counties. So don't come to us in the final hour, saying we need this survey, because unfortunately, other people might have to take priority over that. All right, one last question.
All right, thanks. With the Jaxpo, how does I'm just curious how the cultural assessments, come in, cultural resource assessments come in. So essentially you have your public notice period, and then you have, your Historic Preservation Association that requires that. But if it fulfills the Jaxpo, do you still have to do all of those cultural resource assessments? That's the question.
So Jaxpo and the cultural resource assessments are something totally different. The Jaxpo addresses the endangered species, whereas the cultural resources addresses the National Historic Preservation Act. So they're 2 separate laws that we're looking at. So in certain cases, I know in particular with the Bay County SAR sites, as a result of our public notice, SHPO asked for cultural resources or surveys for these sites. We don't get that request every time. So it's not every time you have to do it. It's, in this case, they felt that, it needed it.
Have those cultural resource assessments in Florida ever turned up anything that caused the site to be cited differently?
I can tell you in my experience, personally, no, but I don't cover the whole state of Florida, and I can imagine that there are some boat wrecks and things that are outside.
Yeah,
Well, and even here.
there have been a few, probably most recently Volusia County, where they identified some targets, and rather than implementing a full archaeological assessment, they opted to create an avoidance area around that, and that allowed the process to proceed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next, I'd like to invite Victor Blanco up. Changing gears a little bit, we had the pleasure of a grant agreement with Victor and Taylor County over the past year to try to reinvigorate their volunteer dive team. And we thought that it would be appropriate for Victor to share some of his experience working with these volunteers in creating this new dive team for Taylor County. So please welcome Victor.
All right, which one is Victor's?
Thank you, Kate. Taylor. Well, actually, I'm not in the Northwest, but we're kind of, of a fuzzy area where the artificial reef program has been working for a long time. I've been in the position as a sea grant agent only for a couple of years in Taylor County. And I realized that artificial reefs and scalloping were like the two main or the most important programs run in the coast of the county. So I committed a little bit with this program and with the guidance of Keith's office and his staff. We were able to put together a proposal for a monitoring program during 2018. So as I said, since about 1995, the Taylor County, a group of people came together and created the Taylor County Reef Research Team. At that time, the idea of the research team was to do the surveys for the deployments, as well as establish a monitoring program. Actually, I think the person back there, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, trained part of that team back in that time. But so they did some surveys, but the information got a little bit lost on dusty files in the office. And we thought it was very important to evaluate the state, have a snapshot of the artificial reef that had been deployed for such a long time, for more than 2 decades, and see the real impact of the artificial reef in the county. So with the funds from FDVC, we were able to establish that. The first step we took was to try to build up a new group of divers. And we used the social media to do that. This is the post that we put on Facebook, and we got a wonderful response. We had more than 31,000 people reach, more than 200 shares, more than 100 comments. And at the end of this phase, we got at least 86 persons who wanted to be part of the monitoring program. Even people from Atlanta sign up to go down and say, well, this is Taylor County in the Gulf of Mexico. And say, yeah, I'm willing to go down there and support the program. Then the second step was to, of course, we needed to train the group. We invite everybody to sign up for a training session. The training was separated in two phases. The first phase was an online module where we sent information about fish identification. We worked together with Bill Limber to build a list of the most common fish found in artificial reef in the Gulf of Mexico in our area. And then after a couple of weeks, we met in the Sting Hatch Community Center, and we held an in-person training where with our specialist, she delivered the presentation or the training on the stationary method and the rubbing method to do fish counts. And we also went through all the forms that we were going to use during our surveys. And at the end of the session, they have to take a test. And as part of the agreement with FWC, those who got 90% or more into the test were able to be part as surveyors for the fish count during the monitoring dives. So this was a very, very important part. At the end, we got 30 persons during the training, and actually 28 of those 30 persons were involved in the dives. It was a very challenging thing to coordinate all the dive and to be able to make everybody go in the water, but we managed that. So here is part of the presentations from Angela Collins, and she, during the training, she presented some case studies, which was a really good way for the persons to understand a little bit what we were doing. I would say that at least 30% were students, graduate or students, and then the rest was just regular divers who wanted to jump in and help build this monitoring program. At the end, what we did is we selected 18 sites. These 18 sites included 4 different types of materials: limber cubes, tetrahedrons, concrete culverts, and scrap metal. And they were deployed in different periods from 1996 up to 2015. So it also allowed us to see how they were doing in time, the structures, and how well they were doing attracting fish. At the end, volunteer divers involved more than 700 hours of volunteer time, with an estimate that's an equivalent of more than $16,000 in contributions, and at least, and they travel from different distance. I would say 80% of the divers were from Gainesville or Tallahassee, so they have to travel a couple of hours at least to go on forward to go to this monitoring program. To your right, you will see the Buckeye Reef monitoring site, and the circle, the purple circles represent the 18 sites that we selected. Actually, we see in the south of those deployment of the tetrahedrons are right outside of the permit area. And those are the tetrahedrons, and so we wanted to include that in the monitoring program as well. This is part of the forms that we used to collect the data. It was just a list of all the most common fish found in the artificial reefs, and then space to get information for the stationary, which we just count the exact number of fish that you see in a specific area, or during the roving, it was just a fish abundance, like a single, few, many, or abundance. One aspect that we didn't cover in this monitoring program was the size of the fish. It was kind of difficult, and I will go through that later. And then we had the other form to collect the data, have a draft of the reef down there, see what's the coverage, if the artificial reef material was intact or was crumbled, what was the status of the material underwater. Here, part of the team before the dives, and then at the end we have 2 teams. Each session we had 2 teams. One was made of scientific divers, and the other one was the volunteer divers. And this was due to university regulations, where as it was a university involved, we could not go with volunteers, divers in the same boat for liability reasons. So in both groups, we make sure one diver was collecting the fish sensing data, the other diver was collecting the artificial reef structure assessment, and then we had a third diver taking pictures and video of the whole sessions. So we built this YouTube channel, which is Boca Reef. We have 32 videos loaded there where you can see all the materials, and is going to be a very useful tool for retraining or this year or volunteers and train the new volunteers who we expect are going to join or artificial reef program, monitoring program. We have more than 1,000 views in the 32 videos, and of course this material open to anybody to use to maybe train your groups. Some results, here's the list of all the fish and the cumulative abundance with all the, in all the reef sites. And well, we took out, of course, the tomtates and fish bait because of the amount was too high. So we just took those out of the graph. But we see that a slippery dig and sand perch are like the most common, but it was a large abundance as well of gray snappers, cobia. Fish was very abundant everywhere. But I think this shows a very more important results. Reef 1 to 4 is limber cubes. Reef 5 and 6 is scrap metal. Reef 9 to 12 is the tetrahedrons, and then the rest is scrap metal. So we see that scrap metal is really doing very good attracting fish. We also saw that the scrap metal usually covers a larger areas on the sea bottom, but they're doing pretty good. All the material we found was intact, at least 90–95% intact on the bottom, which is great. And we really look forward to improve our program. So what we did is we came back to our team and we asked them for some feedback. And so we have a couple of responses here. They said the first one is overall, how satisfied or dissatisfied are you with your experience with the artificial reef monitoring training program? First, we asked about the training. So pretty much everybody was satisfied or very satisfied. Just a couple of persons were not satisfied or very strict. Then we asked them about how likely were there to attend a new training session for the monitoring. Of course, everybody would like to be part. Most of the people wanted to be involved again. This is a lot of information, but we asked them, what would you recommend to improve the monitoring training session? Some people said that it was awesome, but it's very small here. So more pictures, more online, more videos. Initially, we had, as part of the agenda for the training, after the class, go in the pool and do some practice in the pool. At the end, we had to keep that out of the agenda for the ability reasons from the person who was going to let us use the pool. But they said that this is something very important because sometimes they were not it was very different from what they saw on the training of what happened really during the dives. So, and then we asked them, okay, what can we improve? What can we improve during our dive sessions? And pretty much everybody was very happy. Some people said that we needed to be more accurate finding the reefs. At the beginning, we just found the reef and point out the boats through the anchor, but the currents usually make the boat drift. So when the divers went in the water, they had difficult time finding the reef. This happened several times. So we changed that and we just came into the spot. We deploy a buoy And then the divers were able to swim directly to the reef side. Communication, which I don't understand, because before every dive session, I have a debriefing for 30 minutes where I went through the whole activity again with each role, what each diver had to do in their role. We went through the form, we went through the materials and the sites that we were going to dive. They have binders with laminated pictures of the sites and potential material that we were going to find underwater. So I tried to provide a lot of the information. So, but at the end, communication can be improved somehow. More air at the beginning. We just had one tank, but at the end we used to bring 2 or 3 tanks for a couple of dives. This was only like 50 feet deep, and we used to schedule our dive for 30 minutes dive to cover all the activities. I think it was a very good and very challenging program. We learned a lot, and people is very motivated to continue participating this year in the group. As long as we get some funding with the volunteers. Also, some volunteers brought their boats, and we pay for the gas, and we pay for the air. They were very happy to jump in and go in the water and collect the data. I'm still working on the final report, but we're very happy with the results, and I think it's a great way to address a monitoring program for all the counties that are working on artificial reefs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. If we have any questions, we have plenty of time. Oh, Bob, that was a quick hand up there. Christine's running the mic over to you so we can capture that on the Facebook.
Good job there, Victor. I like what you're doing there and the good turnout you had with 30 plus divers. As far as boat support, were all your volunteers there with private boats, or was there any chartered boats involved?
As I mentioned, we had 2 teams. For the scientific diver team, we had a charter boat, was a crabber. So we had plenty of room. It was very, very easy to go in and out the water. In that boat, we could hold more than 4 divers that usually were in that boat. And the volunteers boat was a volunteer boat. So one of the divers come with his own boat, and we paid for the gas and the air of the divers.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you compare the data from the scientific divers to the volunteer divers?
We haven't gone deep into comparisons between those two, but as part of my quality control, quality assurance, after I came back from the dive and went to the office, I tried to went through each form and make sure to make calls and check with the videos. I can say without a doubt, okay, maybe that scientific divers used to identify more species per site than the volunteer divers. I think this is something that is happening, and that's why we need to work more on fish ID, especially the not trophy fish that they're not familiar with. It's very common to misidentify the slippery dig with sand perch. For a trained person, it's very obvious, but for a not trained person, if you are sitting on the bottom and they're swimming around together, it's very easy to think it's only one species when you have 2 species. And this happens also with juvenile species. For example, the white grunt. They get confused to identify the white grunt juveniles as well.
All right, we're not going to keep you from lunch, but we would like a group photo. So I think before lunch, if everyone can just go outside by the steps, we're going to take a group photo. And then I promise you guys can eat. A couple housekeeping things. If you have an afternoon presentation, if you guys could come up to the podium around 12:50 so I can get those presentations from you, that'd be great. And also a reminder, those orange sheets for the evaluations, they're broken out into sessions, so you guys can go ahead and fill out those morning sessions. But we do want those to be completed by the end of the day. So yes, go on out, head out to the front of the building, and I promise the photo will be quick.